Trump is such an interesting cat.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know how to characterize him.
Is he okay, I was going to get to this. Is he a unicorn?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes, and yes. And we're in an interesting time. I saw a thing the other day because I didn't even know who he was growing up. I just know there was this kind of really wealthy guy that had hotels and stuff.
Yeah, because when we were growing up, he was almost a well-known business guy. We'd see in the headline, or he'd show up on Oprah or Phil Donahue or Larry King.
Exactly.
That was his existence.
And he was a New Yorker, and that was a different world, and Atlantic City and all that stuff. You and I are the same. And then, so the other day, I watched this thing that showed an interview, like just a short interview with him every year for the last 50 years. It showed like what he was like when he was young and like a little thing. And the evolution of him was crazy. And then he did The Apprentice. So to me, Donald Trump in 2015 was a game show host / celebrity / business tycoon with kind of a messy life and all this stuff. That's what I thought he was. When they were preparing the Republicans for that, I was like, well, that guy's not going to be president. The media liked him though, because they wanted him to be
he gets eyeballs.
Yeah, and exactly. And they said, and if he becomes the nominee, we're going to tear him apart.
Of course.
And then he won, and all hell broke loose. Well, then I started watching him, and I thought, okay, we've elected this kind of cartoonish, interesting, good Trump, bad Trump, mostly kind of a little, I couldn't relate to him. But I was like all for him doing good things, but I didn't think good things were going to happen necessarily. Like I wasn't like super hopeful that I preferred him to the alternative. And then he was doing things, I was like, and the point here is, God brings out good things from messy situations. I'm a believer in that. And all of us are flawed. And from our flaws, God will bring out good things. And hopefully we'll go, I'm flawed, I want to be better. So then he served his 4 years and then spent the next 4 years just getting attacked. And I was like, I've never seen a person with this thick a skin. I mean, I could not imagine not giving up. And then he got the 2 assassination attempts, and something seemed to change in him. And suddenly I was like, I think this is a different person, because we all change. And now there's still kind of kookiness to him, but I see the substance underneath it, and I see the people around him, and I see the principles. I don't agree with everything he does, but a lot of it, I'm like, I think there's logic and virtue in that. And so I don't think there's ever been anything like this.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because one of the things...
That was a long answer to, yeah, I think he is a unicorn.
Well, and to that end, you're really great at simplifying and kind of classifying things, you know. I'm curious, if you were going to try to label him as this, he's a really rare leader, how would you describe him in very few words? If you're observing him and you were teaching a leadership class, let's assume that, we'll put you there, Professor Lencioni, how would you describe his unique leadership style, maybe?
I would say it's a combination of like practicality. And people say business, but I think it's practicality, fearlessness, like this bizarre ability to offend somebody and not let it bother you and then be nice to them afterward. Like, we've seen him say just horrific things to people. Right. I mean, Megyn Kelly was cheerleading for him at the election. Do you remember what he said to her?
Oh, it was awful. And he couldn't stand her.
And he would go, yeah, it was probably not very nice. Even in that press conference that we were talking about in LA, he was ripping into this Democratic guy that was like, well, what about this? What about this? He goes, nah, you're crazy. I don't believe the way you think. And then he go, well, maybe we can work together on this thing. Right. And so it's just a rare thing. I don't know if that's a New Yorker thing. No. I don't know if it's
his unique personality.
Yeah, but deep inside, what I've seen is there is a humility. And I've seen a compassion for people and for ordinary people. Like, I keep hearing these amazing stories. People like, yeah, he saw me on the side of the road. I was changing my tire. He pulled over. I didn't have this. He paid for this. And it's like, so he is a unicorn.
I just think that he's driven by emotion.
Yes.
He's driven by conviction. And he's driven by legacy. As I've observed him, I think any given moment, he could be driven by emotion. All right? Meaning somebody says something about him, he goes after him, you're public enemy number one.
Yeah.
There are times where I see him driven by conviction, that he really believes something. It's a particular policy. So for instance, I'll give an example. We all know the emotion stuff. You could pick any public figure that's dared to criticize him or debate him or run against him.
Right.
Okay, we all get that. The conviction is tariffs. But this is a man that when he talks about tariffs, he's actually speaking from conviction. In other words, I believe that he actually thinks that those are great economic weapons.
Yes.
And then I would say, like us all, who we all have forms of ambition, I do think he's driven by legacy. He's accomplished a lot in his life.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of this is legacy as well.
Yeah.
And I think because those are now again, I may be wrong, but I'm actually—
I agree.
That makes him such a unique president in that we've rarely seen that combination.
And I don't know why, when I do disagree with him, why it doesn't bother me, because I think it's because he actually believes it. I think he actually believes it. Like when he does something, because there's the things he'll do, and I go, I don't think I believe in that. But he's like, I do, and that's okay. So the one thing I will say about him, he will admit when he's wrong. Not in the moment, but I've seen him change his stance on people.
Yeah.
And he is a unicorn, though.
Again, I want to caution our audience to make sure you understand what I'm driving at, what we're trying to talk about. Because I think we can learn something from any leader. Mm-hmm. We can learn good lessons, bad lessons, whatever.
Separate than the content of what they're doing, but their character.
That's exactly right. And I wonder, what is the leadership attribute that Donald Trump has that has inspired unbelievable loyalty among his base? And I think that is a leadership question, not a political question. If you're going to lead a company—
I have the answer.
I can't wait. Tell me.
It's authenticity. We crave it. There's people that don't even, because wow, I don't even know how to, he's like the unions like him. Well, I never grew up being like a union guy, but now I understand why he is. And he's pulled me along a little bit. But what I do know is this: he's not phony. And I tell you what, the thing about politicians and any leader that we hate is inauthenticity. And which is why, if I did one little thing in the White House, not for him, but for a different thing, and I know some people that were close to him, and I did some work with them. And if I were working with him, man, I wake up every morning with a pit in my stomach, like, what's he gonna do today?
Right.
But I do know this: whatever he did, he mean it.
Right.
And I think I'd go to him and go, "You shouldn't have done that." He'd go, "Well, the guy's a loser."
Yeah, right.
But you're not supposed to say that.
Right.
And so there's something about authenticity that I think, in a world where people are used to commercials that aren't real and politicians that aren't real, and even CEOs these days, they say the thing you're supposed to say. And that's why, you know who is another guy that I think is fascinating? I could watch this guy be a food critic, is Dana White at the UFC.
Yeah. No holds barred, says exactly what he's thinking.
I don't agree with him sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'm like, he really means it, and I can respect that. I would prefer a person come up to me and say, I don't like you, Pat, and here's why, and here's what I think. I could actually deal with that. A person that comes up to me and kisses up, but I know deep down inside they don't feel that way, that is untenable to me.
Yeah.
That scares me.